Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Jim.
Hi. I was just telling these guys I feel like it's like MTV Unplugged. Do you guys remember that? I can't play an instrument, so that will not be happening now.
Well, I haven't played one in a long time. So you know, I mentioned in the intro that you have over 20 years experience. So tell us where did that really begin, that entrepreneurial experience?
It's a good question. You and I were kind of chatting about this before, and one of the things that I was reminded of was when I was a kid, everybody would have like the lemonade stands and all of that kind of thing. I set up a carnival in my basement, and I made all the neighborhood kids pay to get in. This was back in the 80s, and it was $1 to get in, which is big money nowadays. But they all had to go get money from their parents if they wanted to get into my carnival, which is pretty funny because I just set up bottles, and they'd have to throw rings in bottles and stuff. But so I think that might have been one of the beginnings. And another thing that's probably a little more personal was I always say I did, but I guess I still do. I have a learning disability. And so a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's actually been shown, the highest percentage, if entrepreneurs were an industry, the highest percentages of people with ADHD are entrepreneurs. And so I had a reading disability, and people who don't fit in school want to create their own thing. And so I ended up pretty much all my life running kind of my own thing, my own business in some form. And then you got to work your way through school, and so I did that. But I started thinking more and more back to it when we kind of got to talking. I think a lot of it came from having that learning disability and have to literally create my own thing.
So tell us about some of those other ventures. Like I think the other day you were saying that more started in high school, other than the carnival.
Besides the carnival and the candy bars and all that kind of stuff. In high school, I started this is back when beads were cool, the beaded jewelry. And so, it's still cool, by the way, Jessica. And so it was really kind of a big deal to have all that kind of the jewelry. And so I worked at the bead shop, I think it was called. You guys remember that? It was on Western's campus. Yeah, do you remember that?
Yes, I totally.
Okay, so I worked there, and I just worked there for a little bit, and I got to be popular because I could wrap different things, really put like metal around stuff, and I said, oh wow, and so I'd make something, and I sold it. I'm like, oh cool, that made money. Selling beads that cost nothing. I'm like, this is cool, and so I ended up setting up my own kind of jewelry line, and ended up selling jewelry all through high school and a lot of college. It paid for a number of my beers through the years. So there was different stores that would pick up my jewelry line. So
what else did you do besides the jewelry line?
Yeah, so sorry. Next was a paint contracting company. So I ran a paint contracting company here in town. I had 3 crews. If I painted your house, I'm sorry. They were actually good painters. But it was a lot of fun. So 3 crews, and it was through I forget what the organization was called, like Student Painters or something like that. If you guys ever hear those?
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay. So, so that was a lot of fun. That kind of really started to get a taste of really running my own thing at that point. And then you're gonna ask me what's next after that. It's been about, I think I've run. My wife and I were doing the math the other day. I think it's 11 businesses in total, and so there's a couple more in there somewhere. But that was kind of during college, and then I went away to Chicago and worked at Accenture and did the corporate thing for a little bit.
So when you came out of the corporate, I think that was the other story you were telling me. So what was it that you did from that? The restaurant?
Yeah, so I worked at Accenture, which at the time was Anderson Consulting. You guys heard of Accenture? It's corporate consulting, and I worked with a lot of corporate cultures and realized I didn't like any of them. And I'm like, wow, maybe this, corporate is maybe not my scene. And some of them were really cool cultures, like Ben & Jerry's and Bombardier and a couple other kind of cool corporate cultures, but still there's politics and backstabbing and all this crazy stuff. So I left that and what's the logical choice after being a consultant for a while and being billed out at the high dollars and making nothing? I was thinking, you know what? I gotta buy a bar and restaurant. You can see the logical connection, right? I mean, it was the next logical decision, I thought. So I'd always wanted to do that, and I knew I would. I just didn't think I would be broke in doing it. So got some investors, excuse me, and bought. Is anybody familiar with Chicago? So Chicago, all right. Guy in the back, all right. Did you ever go to Coyle's Tippling House? Wouldn't that be cool? That's the bar. It was called Coyle's Tippling House. Before that, it was called Sidelines and a couple other things. And took it over, had a music venue in the back, so we had live music in the back and a neighborhood bar up front, and got some investors, and it was great. It's funny, I always tell people, if you ever want to be king, buying a bar and restaurant is kind of that. You feel really cool in that location. You go anywhere else besides that location, and you are at best the joker, or like a serf or a peasant, because you can't really go out, you don't see your friends anymore. If you do leave, you get robbed, or at least that was what happened to me anyways. But that was a lot of fun. And so someday I'll do that again. My wife's a really good cook, so I'll have her run the food. And we'll do it at some point when we don't need money, or we can lose money, it'll be okay.
Wasn't it, but even doing it, was it, you had kind of had a vision of how you wanted to create it? Or?
Yeah, so it's funny, I didn't think about it at the time, but I had designed this in college, so talking to some buddies, and I designed a bar. And some of them I was still friends with when I was in Chicago, and I started kind of sketching things out. This is what it would look like, this is what it's going to be like. And so the grand opening, my buddy comes over to me and he's like, dude, look around. And I'd been up for like 65 hours or something crazy because we were trying to get it ready. And I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, what? And he's like, you told me about this like when we were juniors in college. This is exactly what you designed. And he started pointing out all the things. And what's cool is that, you know, humans, we're built to create. Like, it's just our nature. We don't have any other way. And so it was just neat to say that, you know, we can, just anything you put in your mind, you can ultimately make that happen. And so I was 25 or 26, owning this big restaurant in Chicago. Probably a little crazy, probably not my best move looking back, but, you know, I made it happen. Got some investors and kind of made it happen. So it was really cool to kind of see that all kind of come alive.
And so what was the difference between doing something like that and working in that corporate culture?
Everything. So, you know, people all joke and say, well, I want to be my own boss. And so if anybody, is there any entrepreneurs here? Okay, got one or two. Sorry, everyone. Or married to one, Stuart. So you pretty much are running your own. So you have more bosses, really. It's not like you have less bosses. So for every one of my clients, that's another boss. And so, but you do get to control that destiny a little bit better, and you don't have to have the, you know, the, excuse my term, but the crappy cultures. Ooh, sorry, kids are here, I forgot. Sorry, Alex. Yeah, earmuffs. So you can create this wonderful culture. You can bring in, you can surround yourselves with people that you care about, the people that, you know, you want to hang out with. And so that was just really powerful. I didn't quite have that at Anderson. And that's actually a really cool culture. Accenture now, I guess is what it's called. So that was a big part of it. And then there's just something about, you know, I put in this effort and X comes out. You know, I enjoyed the, I started to move more closer. I think I'm much closer than I am now, but more closer to what I thought was impact. And so that's a big thing for me, is impact. I want to make an impact in the world, you know. And so I felt like I was getting closer and closer. Seems strange that being a drug dealer, because really if you own a bar, that's really what you are if you think about it. You're just a legal drug dealer. But it seems strange that that's making impact, but I really thought it, you know, there was spirited diversion. We all need those diversions, and if that is, if you enjoy a bottle of wine every once in a while, like my friend Laura, then you know, that's a great diversion, and we all need that. And so I thought I was starting to get closer and closer to that impact.
So do you think that being an entrepreneur is for everyone though? I mean, you've kind of seen both worlds. So is that for everyone to do?
No.
What does it take to do it?
Good question. So first, no, I don't, I think anybody, if they put their mind to it, they can do whatever they want. And so I think that we hear that all the time. We're supposed to say that to our kids, so hopefully Alex and Max are listening. But I think we can. I don't think it is for everybody. And I think now we're starting to glamorize, I'm going to be the next Silicon Valley billionaire. And I don't think everybody is built that way. I've jokingly with some other entrepreneurs called entrepreneurism a bit of a disease, right? You get captured in it, and I came back to Kalamazoo and I promised myself that I was not going to run my own thing and I wasn't going to have employees. If for some reason I failed at the first one, I wasn't going to at least have employees. And within, I think, 6 months of moving back into Kalamazoo, I had started a business and I had an employee. And so it just gets you, and you can't really kind of get away from it. So if you don't have that, it doesn't make you a bad person or a good person. I mean, people who run companies need people who work for them. So I think that's really important. But I don't think everybody's built that way. And question 2, do you remember?
What does it take? What does it take to be an entrepreneur?
Gumption, persistence, perseverance. A little bit of crazy. I always say entrepreneurs, they're not twisted, because that's going too far, but they're a little bent. Does anybody know Chris Kroll? He's a well-known. Chris Kroll owns Gazelle Sports. So if you know Chris Kroll, he's a little bent, man.
He was one of our guests in 2014.
Okay.
Yep.
He's a great guy, don't get me wrong, but the other day I saw him, he was in a tutu when he was running. I was like, dude, what are you doing in a tutu? He's like, whatever. A little switch, we didn't get a chromosome or got an extra one or something like that. There's a little switch, I think, different. But I also think there is something about a perseverance, and there's that, you're the kid that somebody told him you couldn't do it, and it's like, oh yeah, I can't do that? Like, I'll show you. You get hurt a lot, by the way, by being that guy. So I think those are some things. I think sometimes people talk about, you got to be good with money and you got to have a head for this and that. And I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I just don't see that. I see that they come from all different avenues. And if you're passionate about something, I think that you can be a very strong, successful entrepreneur.
So what was it that you saw in all those different experiences that kind of led you to decide that you wanted to help people in their experiences?
So one of those is that I wanted to start to make money off my mistakes instead of losing money from my mistakes. So I would love to say that all of my ventures were wildly successful, but I'd be blatantly lying to you, and you all look like very nice people. So I'll lie to the next group if I talk to them. So no, the reason I could make money from my mistakes is that I started working with business owners and saying, hey, I've done this. This doesn't work. I failed doing this. And no matter how much we enjoy success, you will always learn more from failing than you will from succeeding. It's just the way we're built. You'll learn more from a funeral than a wedding, is the way I always say it. And so I realized that in some of those failures that maybe I had learned a little something that could be of value to business owners. And so I taught at KBCC for a while, doing that. I knew the dean down there, and so he kind of snuck me in because I don't have a master's degree. I guess you're supposed to if you're teaching college classes. They kicked me out when they figured it out at some point. But then I also started working with some entrepreneurs and helping them think through stuff, and really enjoyed that. Working with entrepreneurs is just a blast. Many of you are entrepreneurs, and it's just a beautiful community in my opinion. So I was like, this is great. So I get to work with the people I love, and then I get to help them to achieve their dreams. So I'm like, okay, I think I found it. So I've run 11 businesses, and I'm 12 years into Nexus, which is ultimately helping business owners to achieve their dreams.
And I think you had said that's your longest running one, right?
Yeah. Some of them didn't last very long. You had to point that out, thanks. I love it, actually. So I know that I found a bit of my passions. I think, sometimes people think that, people just have one passion, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think we have multiple passions, but for me, this is definitely one of them. Helping business owners and business leaders ultimately to achieve their beauty, right? So I was speaking in front of a group, and somebody asked me, what is it? And I really kind of dug in, and I was like, how cool is it that I get to help somebody like become the pinnacle of themselves in some regards, right? So, we love when we ultimately are achieving this beauty or this thing we bring into the world, and I think that power that entrepreneurs bring is amazing. And I started to realize, wow, if I can help people do that. And so I sometimes take it too far. Quick story, I was working with one of my business owners. I won't tell you his name because of what he said to me. I'll try to keep it clean too, because Alex is Kevin's arms now. But he was screwing something up, and I said, dude, what are you doing? You keep screwing up my company. This is the owner of his company. And I'm like, he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, seriously. I just went with it. I'm like, and that's the way I feel. I get with these companies, and it's like it becomes mine, and I just feel like that is, I get really excited. And it's funny because he agreed with me. He's like, I know, help me think this through, Jim. What do I need to do? And so there was a big change for me. Nexus was successful, but not where I wanted it to be. And the big change for me was I realized that my true passion is helping companies achieve their dreams and not people. So no offense to all the people here, but my passion's the company. So if you guys all own companies, it's your company that I get all excited about. And so I used to do like personal coaching and business coaching for executives and all these other kinds of things, and I realized that it just wasn't as much fun. It was about making that company great because that's their dream, that's the thing, and that affects a lot more lives than I can do with just making one person great. And don't get me wrong, I recommend business coaches to every one of my clients, but that just wasn't my passion.
It's part of that impact that you're talking about.
Sorry, your question will be a little longer. Excuse me. So for me, impact's important. You got to figure out what's important for you. And I think when impact meets your passion, when the world values what you bring and it is your passion, when those two things meet, I think you found a business. My passion of working with entrepreneurs, so I got the right target market. I really enjoy working with them. I love helping making businesses great, wildly successful. I was joking to one of my clients the other day. I was like, dude, this is like a printing press at this point. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're just at the point where you're just kicking money out. And this guy is, I say he's Amish. He says he's something else, but he's pretty much Amish. And so he's like, I was Amish. I'm not Amish anymore. I think maybe he got kicked out. But he pretty much works on skid steers, right? This is a mechanic who works on skid steers. And this guy, his business is profitable, $2-3 million a year, And it's just cool because he wasn't there before. And so that makes impact. So the money is one part of it. But what he said to me in a meeting, so this is a guy who's not prone to emotion. So kind of salt of the earth kind of guy, but like, I work on tough machines and I build them, make them better, like kind of more of that guy. And but he said to me, I said, how's things going? And he was just in front of his team. And he said, Jim, EOS has been what I do. I implement a process called EOS. He said, EOS has been amazing. And he said, and your help has been really helpful for us. He goes, for my business, I'm just happier and we're just more successful and everyone's really connecting and I'm in my right, the right spot where I should have been this whole time. And he said, but I gotta tell you, I now have a relationship with my kids. He said, because I'm happier and that really helps. He goes, I now have the time ultimately to be present in their lives. He said, even when I was with them before, I wasn't really there. I was always thinking about stuff at work or whatever, and he's like, so it's amazing. And he started kind of getting a little teary-eyed, and I was like, man, don't cry, man, because I'll lose it. So it was a pretty cool moment. That's the impact that I'm talking about. When not only am I making that company great and all those people in it, but changing lives.
try to make it a longer question
No,
so you can take a sip of water. So, doing this, would you say that you need support somewhere, and like what type of support did you have either as a kid or like in your entrepreneurial experience, and what do you see other people, like what do they have, or what do you think is important?
Yeah, so one thing that if you're an entrepreneur that you're going to have plenty of, and so if you're looking for more of this, become an entrepreneur. If you want naysayers in your life, there's plenty of naysayers that are going to go out and are going to tell you why it doesn't work. And unfortunately, some of those may be in your family. So that's always hard, people that you love telling you that, you're just not thinking about this straight, that doesn't make sense. And so I definitely had some of that. Probably the worst, I was looking for investors for my bar and restaurant, and I was telling some of my family about it. Some of them were in Chicago, my bar and restaurant in Chicago. And so there was somebody who was really interested and knew my uncle. And so my uncle told the guy, he's like, it's just a pipe dream. He's just a stupid kid who ultimately, just wants to have a place so he can drink and hook up with girls. And I'm like, so hook up with girls part I thought was kind of cool. But I was like, you gotta be, and I got pretty upset. And so I told my dad that I was gonna have a conversation with my Uncle Ed. Like, I want to tell you what your brother did. And he's like, no, I'll take care of it. You're not gonna call my brother. And I let him handle it. I'm not sure what happened, but the guy did invest because of that. And so, I talked to my dad about it, and one of his first things when I told him was, you got this great corporate job, and just be happy, get a little more money. And I said, this is all your fault. He's like, what? I said, you loved what you did. My dad was a judge in town, and he loved it. He really could affect lives and impact. And my mom was a kindergarten teacher at St. A's, and so. My dad always used to say, the ones that didn't have your mom I see in court. Which is probably partially true. My mom was a bit of a saint, or is a saint. And so she, and I told him, I said, you guys did what you loved. You found your passions, and ultimately you brought your heart. I think a lot of times we sometimes just bring our heads to our work, and if you can bring your whole self to what you do, awesome, right? You don't work a day of your life. I'm not saying it's all going to be easy, but how cool is that? And so they did that, and I could see it. So he still tried to talk me out of it, but in much more of a loving way, more like, not my uncle's way, in much more of a loving way. But it was tough, not to have that affirmation from Dad. And so he came around, he invested a little money, actually wrote up a contract for my dad, the judge. I will pay you back X dollars. If we make money, was the last part. So what's interesting is that I think sometimes we have to find our own path. And so if you don't have your own voice, or you can't find that well within inside you, you won't always hear it from other people. And so I wouldn't say that I think I had a lot of friends and family that were very supportive and loving, but there was nobody out there that was like, I think a lot of people do when they become entrepreneurs, but I didn't have that background. I just had two parents that loved what they did, and so I had to find my way.
So how did you find support then, or it was really just you making your own path?
Yes, some of both, right? Being an entrepreneur, you're definitely making your own path.
Right.
But to say that I didn't have support, I definitely have friends like that. Like my buddy who pulls me aside after opening the bar, and he's like, "Dude, look around. Like, just stop for a second and just look what you created." And I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." And a lot of friends and people kind of come out of the woodwork. And I was like looking for a copywriter, and one of my friends was dating a woman at the time, and he said, "Oh, Lisa will be great at this." And I was like, "All right, great." So she, redid my business plan at the time, and my brother-in-law, he was a graphic artist, and so he did our logos and came up with some really cool slogans. One of my favorites, side story, was we did a big Shamrock or a St. Patrick's Day party. He had this leprechaun on the back, and it had it like this with big like brass knuckles, and it said, "Shamrock you like a hurricane." Awesome. I still think he came up with it. I've seen it after that, and I'm like, "You came up with this, right?" I was like, "Yeah, everybody stole it from you." So, So people like that really kind of stepped up. And so I don't think sometimes you realize, all the love and the support that you have when you're going through it, but it's there. You just have to look for that and not always hear the naysayers, because there's always going to be people telling you can't do it. And most of the time that speaks more of them than you.
Okay, so if you didn't have a particular role model, how did you learn how to do all these different things?
So it goes back to my first comment, I screwed it up. Yeah, screwed it up over and over and over again. And I'm like, oh wait, okay, so that didn't work the first 6 times. All right, I got something. I think I'm going to do this a different way. And so really figuring some of it out. And so...
I guess what I also mean
okay.
is, like, did you read books, or did you, like, where were your examples if they weren't from a particular person?
Yeah, I think, well, some of it was examples, just of other entrepreneurs. So the bar and restaurant I bought, there was some guys who owned it before then, and I was kind of emulating them, and so I sat down with them. I'm the kind of guy who says, I think you're cool, can I grab lunch with you? And so I was kind of more that guy. And so I went out and searched the people and the influences that I wanted. And so I think sometimes people kind of float down the river, and I think a lot of times you need to paddle a little bit more. And so for me, I was out searching for those people, and so I would find them depending on what I was doing. So like now what I'm doing, I have a great mentor, Gino Wickman, good friend and mentor. He's in the Detroit area, so got to know him, and so I can always run things by. But if you look back, you don't always think of them as being your mentors and people that you look up to and are kind of helping you think things through. But so I had that. Books are definitely something. I'm an avid reader, which is funny because when I was a kid, my learning disability was reading, so I was the dumb kid in the green group. But I figured out, all right, I could work around this, and so I figured out how to read. And then I just started to read. I'm like, well, this is cool. There's like stories I could read. I could get into this whole other world. And I really got into like different business books and things. And reading. There really wasn't much of an internet when I was back doing this, so I wasn't out on YouTube looking at videos. That probably would have been helpful. Probably books and all those mentors that just kind of come out of the woodwork if you go looking.
So speaking of books then, any particular ones that stand out for recommending to other people?
Well, definitely one, and it's self-serving, so I'll tell you that right off the bat. If I have to pay some fine for being self-serving, I will. But the book Traction, so what I do is I implement a system called the Entrepreneur Operating System. And so that, the book is called Traction by Gino Wickman. And the book really compiles a lot of great thought leaders in business. So it's Jim Collins, it's Patrick Lencioni, it's Dan Sullivan, it's Vern Harnish, who are some other people, Stephen Covey, Drucker. I could go through, and even like Rockefeller. Rockefeller wrote a book about Titans, the big Titans, and what made for great companies back in 1912. And so he compiled all of this stuff and kind of brought it all together. And so if you're only going to read one business book, that's a good one. Because it really kind of compiles it and really brings it all together. So that's one of my favorites. And it's funny, it was one of my favorites even before implementing EOS. I love when people pull sometimes difficult ideas and pull them together in a very simple form. And that's something that he did. And then give it tools. I'm not a big tool guy. So some other great ones. I do like Jim Collins' Great by Choice. This one I just read that was really good. Turn the Ship Around. I forget the guy's name, but it's really good. Anybody know who wrote that book? Turn the Ship Around. It's a really good management book. The guy's a genius. So it was a submarine commander. So if you're into kind of the way the military commands, it's really neat because he kind of flipped it all on its head and pretty amazing. So here's a couple. It's funny. I always have my clients challenge me, and I usually have a microphone, but I always say, okay, so what's your issue? And they'll tell me the issue. I say, okay, here's a book you need to read. So one is that being an entrepreneur is great because it really helps you. You need to be reflecting a lot, and so I would get reflective, and so that conversation would be much more, okay, so what did I miss? What are the things I should have seen? What would I do differently? And I really start to think those three. Okay, this is what I would do differently, and what are the business models that would help me? What business model could I do next time that would avoid that? So bars and restaurants, one of the things, there's always constant marketing. So I started studying bars and restaurants, and I said, one bar types of restaurants that don't need constant marketing are ones that are in food courts at like malls and stuff like that. And I started thinking about all the things about that business model. So I started studying that kind of stuff, and so I just thought that was what I did, Charlie, was kind of dig in and say, okay, what is it about, what didn't I know? And then dug in and try to figure out, let me figure that out. Let me then know that the next time. And so you can't let the failures get in the way of your next success. And so there is that next success. You just have to get through the failures. And I had plenty. It wasn't always that seamless. Right. A couple beers, a little burn, tears. Mad at the world, and then
get it out somehow.
Yeah, to get it out, right, exactly. And that was my healthy way of doing it. So, that answer your question?
Yeah.
Good. Awesome. Did you have a question?
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you. Hold on while I try to remember. Oh, yes, sorry. Okay. Oh, thank you.
Stacy knows that I have kind of a demure voice. Okay, my question is, it seems like mentorship obviously is a very important component for you, pushing outward. I would like to know more about your mentorship that has poured into you in your life, and how you would suggest navigating the Southwest Michigan environment as I'm in search of more mentorship.
Yeah, good question. So, biggest thing is literally go. I think you have to be more intentional as an entrepreneur, and so I think the more intentional you are about anything, really, I think the more successful you'll be. And so find who you want that to be. So let's say, I'll just grab somebody's name out of the hat, Jen Crandall. Let's say she runs this wonderful business named Maestro. And so you're saying, wow, I'd really love for her to be, I think she would be a great mentor for me for all these reasons. Call her, ask her, show up here. Oh, you're gonna show up here. Jen's gonna be like, thanks, Jim. 10 people were waiting to talk to me. She's wonderful people, and so, figure out who that is, like what would that be, and then ask. You'd be amazed. Some of the most, successful, really busy people are completely willing to put themselves out there and help other people, and I don't think we do that. So that'd be one thing. Just go be intentional about asking for that help. And you may get, somebody telling you, no, I don't have time, sorry, but try again, get back at it. I mean, if that's your worst failure as you get into this, you're doing great. So that would be one thing. And the other thing that I think is very important, I was helping, what's it called, Starting Gate, and I was sitting down having a conversation kind of like this, and we were talking about mentorship. Make sure you know what you want to get out of it. So once again, this intentional piece, right? So what is it that you want to get out of this? And make sure that you then craft the relationship so you get that. And so if you want somebody to really hold you accountable and push you, you gotta say that. I want somebody to hold me accountable, I want somebody to push me. Or if I really just want a sounding board. Or maybe you want a cork board. My wife and I sometimes, we're talking about stuff and she's like, just a cork board, because I'm always trying to fix stuff. And so you need to know what you want going in there. So if you're really intentional about that, and then the people that you think could be great for you, I think you can end up creating a really cool relationship. And it's really, and it's great. It's powerful for both sides. So they're getting a lot out of it as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, awesome. Other
Anyone
questions?
else have one?
very much. So when I looked at the program tonight in the EOS, I clicked on that and went to their website and perused that for a little bit. And you've had your company Nexus, you said 12 years?
Mm-hmm.
So how long have you been involved in the EOS and, program, and how has that changed what you originally started off doing with Nexus?
Yeah, great question. So, what was your name? I'm sorry.
John.
And what was your name, Miss?
Oh, me, Katie.
Katie.
Yeah.
Okay, Katie. I'm at a disadvantage. You guys know my name. I don't know yours. Yeah, what's interesting is that, so Gino Wickman is the guy who created the Entrepreneur Operating System. And so Entrepreneur Operating System gets short to EOS because it's a mouthful. Gino had read all the same books that, any business owner has read. And for avid readers, he just then started to compile it and put a tool set together. 12 years ago when I started Nexus, almost 12, I don't want to lie to you, it's 12 in July, so close. But 11 some odd years ago, when I started Nexus, I realized that it didn't need to be such chaos and complexity when running a business. And there was always going to be a piece of that, but I'm like, there's got to be a way to simplify this. Not easy and simple are not equal, but there needed to be a simpler way. And so I sat down, hired that market researcher that I said I wouldn't hire, and we really kind of crafted that, I thought, better approach. So kind of a more of a holistic system, looking at business in much more of a broad scope. So not consultants, because consultants by definition are specialists. So we were looking at the business more in a broad scope. And so we crafted that better way. We looked at a lot of the other tools and we just didn't like any of the other tool sets. And then 6 years ago now, I read Traction. I was blown away. And I'll be honest, the guy who gave it to me wasn't all that nice of a guy at the time. Now we're good friends. But he gave it to me and told me to read it. I'm like, I can learn from a jerk too. I'm like, all right, fine. I read the book. I'm like, oh man, this is really good. So I had to call him up and I was like, you're a bit of a jerk when we met. And he's like, oh, yeah, we got talking about it. And I said, but I'm really intrigued with this. And he said, well, don't let me get in the way, if you want to do it. So I called up Gino and I said, so Gino, I love all this stuff. I've got a similar tool set. I'd really like to come and learn it and then steal all your tools and put it into our system. And he said, absolutely. I'm like, I just told this guy I was going to rob him. And he's like, I'll open the door. We did, and very similar, it's just a better mousetrap. So he came to the same conclusions and definitely the same value structure, which was really important to me. But he built a better mousetrap. And I told my wife I was struggling. I said, I put tens of thousands of dollars into our model and countless hours. And she said, my wife is a wonderful mirror. She said, can you look your clients in the eye and say that you have the best way forward? No, was the answer. It took me a little while, but once I pushed through that, I realized, maybe I should check this out. So it's definitely changed. My clients, I had clients before who were using our model and then are using EOS, and thank God they didn't think everything we did before was crap. But they were like, okay, this is great. This is kind of our next step. And so a lot of them have taken off. And so it's a lot of fun. That answer your question? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions?
What's next?
What's next?
Number 13.
Yeah, no. It's funny because Nexus is, I've run it for 12 years, so there's nothing I've run it that long. I've run a lot of different businesses, and I'm still a landlord in town. And so there may be things that are kind of not side projects, but there would be things that I'd be helping other people do. And so I think this is what I'll do the rest of my life, actually. And so will there be other things? Maybe. I don't know what that is. But right now, I'm loving it. So, if you love what you do, forget it. So when I figure it out, I'll let you know. Yeah.
Hi, I'm David.
Hi, David.
We have a event promotion system and marketing. We have a minimum viable product right now. We have received some good reviews out in the community. We'd like to get some insight and turn that into more revenue. projects that we can spend more time on and actually eat. So what's it take to get you to help us out on something?
Awesome. Lunch.
You available tomorrow?
No, my schedule's a little tighter than that. But I don't mean that in a bad way. I just, no, it won't work tomorrow. But no, absolutely. Let's grab lunch. So I seriously, I love working with entrepreneurs, and so I have some friends that are entrepreneurs, and they're like, you know, they were asking. I think one of them was literally asking Jen a question about business because they felt funny asking me. I'm like, she doesn't. My wife's much smarter than I am, but when it comes to business, I have a little bit more of the business brain. And they're like, well, we just feel comfortable and uncomfortable because this is what you do. I'm like, no, I love doing this. So let me help you. So absolutely, let's grab lunch. I'm not, I don't have the computer brain. There's probably people that work at Maestro that would have that side of it much better than I would. But from a business perspective, I'd have no problem sitting down and talking it through. So, yeah, I'm all in. So that was easy, huh? See, you just have to ask the mentors. Other questions?
Yes, I'm going to ask you one. So you talked a lot about I, so you started your businesses. Did you do everything solo or did you have partners? You talked about investors, and then the second part of that would be if you did do things separate or the businesses that you do consult with, what do you see is successful for people that run really well solo versus partners? Because I think a lot of businesses are started by partners or groups of people that get together with a like idea and build their team.
Right, yeah, no, and I definitely got some feelings on that personally, and then from all my experience. Did I sound really egotistical? No. Partners, so, and my wife knows I say this, by the way, I think you need to pick business partners at the same level, if not greater, than you would pick your life partner. You end up spending more time with them than you do with your spouse, if you have a spouse or a significant other. And so I think you have to, look into them and date them in a much greater regard, and much more intense in many regards. And so I use the word intimacy, and I don't always mean it in the way that people talk about it. I think two heterosexual men can have intimacy if they have really close, connected conversations and that kind of thing. And you need to have that with partners. You won't always have it. I mean, sometimes you want to bash each other's brains out, or at least that was my experience with some of my partners. But you really have to go in knowing. Don't think that, the business gets successful and then they'll change. It's kind of like marrying a guy who's terrible with kids, and they're like, well, once we have him, it'd be great with kids. Like, that's not how it works. So that would be my first thing. Vet them, like literally dig in, figure out, is this the kind of person I really want to spend most of my days with? And then the other piece is that then make sure you have a good ability to keep that connection. So one of the things with partners is that things need to be very clear on what everybody's roles are. So I was talking to a guy today about his partnership. So strange enough, I'm having this conversation with a guy, and we're talking all about his partnership. And I said, so dig in, figure out truly what your roles are, like what you're great at. I'm good at this, you're good at this. So, and then when things are being decided in this regard, I kind of have final say. I want to bounce it off you, but I have final say for this, final say for this, and like literally dig up a way that you are going to operate. A little bit of an operating agreement. I'm always a big fan of writing it down. And if you're their friend or family, you need a bigger contract, not a smaller contract. Most people think, but I trust them. This is, you want to have it all spelled out. And I don't mean I'm not a guy who puts the law in between everything, but I think you just want to make it sure it's painfully clear, so roles are clear, and then you want to have that meeting pulse, is what we call it, where you're really connecting and making sure that you're doing that connection, so outside the business. So make sure you're doing that at least monthly with them. So getting out, just connecting in sometimes a social way, and then maybe talking about business, but just getting out of that. I found that my most successful partnerships are in that, have much more of that approach. And it's the same ultimately for husband and wife teams. I have one here today with Derek and Adrian who run Memories, but the same thing, I would recommend the same thing with them. Yeah, oh, we see each other, but no, are we connecting in that regard outside of that? And so that would be one of the things. And one more thing when it comes to partnerships. So roles are clear, you got that good meeting pulse, you vetted them out, and then just make sure that there's a way, if it's two partners, are you in a partnership? No? Okay. If it's just two partners, what is the tiebreaker? So figure that out. And I've had a lot of clients split because of literally just one thing, one issue got in the way. And so they had to figure out the tiebreaker. And so one of my clients, I was their tiebreaker. All right, whatever Jim says, that's what we'll do. And then, of course, I choose wrong for one guy and I choose right for the other guy. And the guy goes, you don't know what you're talking about. So, like, that's what I think's the right way. But figure out who the tiebreaker is. And so it's got to be somebody who doesn't have, it can't be like your spouse or, somebody who likes them better or something. So figure that out. And I think you can be wildly successful as partners. It's a lot of fun having partners if it's done right. Answer your question? No? Come on, keep asking me. Push me.
No, that's okay.
That's not fun.
Well, tell me a little bit about what your experiences were.
Okay.
Some of your stories.
So I had, in the bar, I had 8 partners. Yes, because I was 9. And so I failed in communicating enough to them. So some of them were surprised when then I was selling the business, which is not all that good because they own part of the business and they were surprised I was selling the business. Oops. Did I forget to tell you we haven't been making money? Communication, I screwed up, and so that was a piece of it. Managing 8 partners isn't fun, and so one of the things I did, thank God, was they all had legally gag orders, and so they all signed a contract saying that if it was all in legalese, but it pretty much said that if I wanted your opinion, I'll ask, which isn't super nice. But the thing is that I would tell them, and when they became partners, they signed this. I said it protects you from all the other people. I said, I'll come to you and I'll look out for advice, but just think if I have 7 other people, not this other person, but 7 other people always barking, like, do it this way, it just won't work, right? Especially a bar and restaurant. Oh, the sandwich needs a little more of this, it needs a little more of that, you should have picked the green drapes. Like, God's sakes, there's just so many details with the restaurant that I was like, it doesn't make sense to do that. And so that was another thing that, luckily I got that right, and then, definitely had some partners that went off that reservation that we did. So definitely a story maybe for beer, but one of them happened to be in the mob, so that caused issues, we'll say. So running a business in Chicago with the mob being your partner is fun. So over beers, we can all have that conversation because it was a little crazy. Is that a little better? Am I getting closer? You're tough. What else?
Lots of questions.
Yeah. Katie?
Is that all right?
I think it's okay. I don't know what to say.
This is a tough question, and I'm saying it mostly to make myself feel better about myself.
Okay.
But I want to know.
You said you learn more from your failures than from your successes.
Yeah.
And maybe this is asking a lot, but I'd love to hear about one of these failures from which you learned quite a bit. Would you be willing to share it?
Yeah, so I started down that road at Jessica, right? Okay. When I was telling Jessica, so the bar, so Chicago, this is me blaming everybody else. Chicago is more corrupt than 10 times more than you know. And so I was struggling with keeping my integrity and running a business. And I decided that I was going to do both, and that was just the deal. And so I was called a Boy Scout more than once. I was like, I was never in the Scouts. But I just should have dug in a lot more when I bought the bar and restaurant in Chicago. So that's probably one of my bigger failures.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so what does that mean? So if you're going to buy a bar and restaurant, you really want to know all your neighbors. So you should meet all your neighbors before you buy a location. And so it probably won't be helpful for many of you, but you literally should go house to house and meet all of them and ask them what they think of the bar and restaurant. I didn't do that, and found out the guy behind me had been trying to shut the restaurant down for years. That would have been good information to know before I bought it. And so he just had to vet that out. He didn't even know me, right? He just wanted the bar and restaurant closed. But first, it was about sound issues, and so I'm the type of person that says, if you got a problem with me, I'm like, all right, let me try to fix it. So we soundproofed the whole place and spent tens of thousands of dollars soundproofing it. And then I literally got a decibel reader, and I'd stand up on my roof when the band, and I'd literally have the band crank it up and be like, come on guys, bring up the noise, I'm gonna go up and do the decibel reader. And so, I was within legal limit. And so the city sent out their guy, because this guy's trying to shut me down. He's like, send a guy over, it's so loud, whatever. And so I'm on the roof with my decibel reader, and I look across, and there's the city guy on this guy's porch holding up the decibel reader. He's like, come down here. I'm like, all right, so I go down, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm trying to make sure it's not too loud, because the neighbors told me it was too loud. He's like, who are you? I'm like, I'm the bar owner. He's like, I've never met a bar owner who's sitting on top of this frickin' roof in the middle of the night, with a decibel reader. And I said, well, it's a problem, right? I'm just, naive Kalamazoo boy in Chicago, I guess. And so I should have thought that through, because I fixed that issue, and then they found some other things. And so Chicago was trying to get rid of liquor licenses. They had 7,000 liquor licenses when I opened the business, and 5 years later they had 3,500 liquor licenses. So there's no way you can shrink the liquor licenses down that way legally. Not that that's important in Chicago's, the political doesn't work. You just gotta, now it's like, do it all right, or don't do it. So kind of go all in, try to do it really right. Now, I'm all for, now I'm going to forget it. David, you said the least viable option, or the, what's it called?
Minimum viable.
Minimum viable option. Okay, good. Obviously, I'm not a computer guy. And so, no, I think that's the best approach, because you don't build it and they will come. Let's figure out, what people like. So don't get me wrong, I get that, but then when you do it right. So I screwed that up as well. So, and lost a lot of money. If you really want to get personal, I can tell you how much money I lost, but we'll just say a lot. And my dad had invested too, and it was like, ouch. I did pay him back, but don't tell my other investors, because nobody else got their money back. So that's
She told me to keep the minimal viable, so I saved a lot of time because I do the programming.
Yeah.
And I bet I could have programmed a whole lot more, but I just followed her rules on that one.
Yeah, no, and it makes complete sense. It's funny, because I have maybe this is my next thing. I have a little piece of software that we were trying to design with a couple of other people, and I was like, let's just create the thing. I thought that's the way you did it, and it's like, no. Build it in PowerPoint first. And so literally we built the whole thing out in PowerPoint first. Did you do that too? Okay, so.
I did a demo, before I knew anything about Adobe, I did my demo in PowerPoint, with animations in PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's what we did. I was like, look, you click this button, it goes to the next slide. It's like another page on a website. I got really good at PowerPoint. So yeah, I think that's the best approach. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Did you?
Any further questions we can probably save if you're going to be hanging around anyways, but I'm going to ask one more. So as far as Kalamazoo, so what do you think might be missing, or what might help for the city of Kalamazoo, for this area in Southwest Michigan?
In regards to entrepreneurs, or
entrepreneurs, yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say food establishments or carnivals. I got one in my basement. To be honest, I've lived in a number of communities. I've never been in a community I think that's more supportive of entrepreneurs. I really just think that we have a very supportive community, and the entrepreneurs who are successful are willing to really put themselves out there. And so I really feel like this is an amazing community to be an entrepreneur. And so you're all very lucky. If you haven't had experiences in other towns, this town, I think, really puts itself out there much more and really wants to grow and help people. And I think some of that comes from, if you have a town, at one point we had 3 4-year universities in this town, right? And Wyoming has 1 4-year university in the whole state. Kalamazoo, Michigan had 3. And now Nazareth's gone, but we still have 2. And a very large community college. And so I think that there's a part of that just, giving nature. So I'm struggling on what we need. It'd be one thing, and I think that I've talked to a couple entrepreneurs about this. I don't know if it would ever happen, but I think it'd be really cool if we had a pool of angel investors. Like, so some of our very successful entrepreneurs in town who pooled their money together and started to kind of invest in some of the smaller businesses. I'd love to see that. I've actually kind of poked a couple of my business owners who could be angel investors. Why don't you do this? Like, no, I don't know. Oh, come on, stop being so crotchety. And so, I think that would be cool. I think it would be great if people had that kind of hard money approach and had the ability to connect to that.
Well, thank you, Jim. What round of applause? We'll be here for a little while longer, right?
Yeah, I'm around. So if anybody has any questions, I'm an open book. So
We'll be off
please
mic, too.